Sangeeta, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to everyone attending the generic talk series on serving online and mobile banking platforms. I extend a warm welcome to all of you. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Sujatha Viswanathan, currently serving as a manager at Capgemini in Chennai. She is an accomplished IT professional with over 15 years of extensive experience in the industries. Ms. Sujatha holds a BE degree in Information Technology from Anna University and is well regarded for her strong analytical and technical skills. She possesses expertise in modern technologies such as Angular, ASP.NET, SQL Server, Web API, .NET Core, and HTML. This she has effectively utilized throughout her career. Her professional journey includes significant contributions to leading organizations. At Tata Consultancy Services, he served as an assistant consultant from 2021 to 24, focusing on expertise grade solutions. Prior to that, she worked as a senior software engineer at CGA from 2019 to 2021 and at Nextsphere Technologies from 2014 to 2019. Where she designed and implemented cutting edge web applications. Ms. Sujata's commitment to innovations and her technical expertise have established her as a trusted leader and mentor in the IT community. Without any further delay, I hand over the session to her. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Sangeeta, for your warm welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, it gives me immense pleasure to talk about this session about securing online and mobile banking platform on this wonderful Sunday morning. Actually, I don't want to take this topic as an end user point of view. I want to take up this topic with the what are we doing in the banking domain as a professionals. So I want to talk more about that one in this particular topic. Okay. So when I was in college, I used to go to bank for each and every particular transaction. Although I may retrieve my amount from ATM, my parents used to go to bank to deposit all the money so that I can able to retrieve it. But everything changes in the past decade. Now we can do everything in a single click. Like we are having more we can able to access more easily, and it's more user friendly, and we can able to access all the banking domain in 24/7. So everything changes in this past decade, although it has its advantage, but it has its equal disadvantages. We are having there are more scams, cyber attacks, and everything. So how we are going to identify all those things, and how we are going to what are the things we are doing to that means what are the things we need to do and what not to do, we can discuss in this topic here. So today my agenda is introduction to secure banking platform and secure system architecture, development best practices, and risk management and mitigations. So let's go to the topic. It's the first one is on user awareness. So when talking about user awareness, we need to know what are the common mistakes the user will do. we all know about this, but I want to touch the basic on these things. Like we will give that we may give the use weak or easily recognizable password. We may fall for the phishing scams, and then without our knowledge, we will give our sensitive information in an unsecured channels. So those are the things the user can make. Uh, user can make some mistakes. So what are the impacts it will create? The main thing that we are facing in our banking domain now is a data breaches. Data breaches is a increased risk that we are facing now. And also malware infections, and also uh, it causes reputational damage to the individual as well as businesses. And what are the strategies we are taking now to avoid all these things? So regularly monitoring all the vulnerabilities, and then uh, as a professional, we will undergo constant or periodical training on those vulnerabilities. We will check on the old vulnerabilities, and and they will give a brief introduction about the new vulnerabilities that are occurring day to day life. So those are the things we are, as a professional, we are undergoing training on. And you all know about what are the common cyber threats. The one is the phishing attacks. Like I said, we make, without our knowledge, we may click on any suspicious link, or we can click on any attachments. So those things will come under phishing attacks. And also we all know about malware and spyware. Malware is a malicious software designed to gather sensitive information. Spyware, it monitor user activity and capture login credentials, everything. So how we will restrict malware, spyware, everything is like we can run the antivirus software, uh, and we need to update that antivirus software regularly. And you all know about the man in the middle attack. So there will be a man who will keep on eavesdropping our transactions, and he can guess our credential, and he also alter our inputs. So these are the three common cyber attacks that we all know about. And here is the main topic that I want to go detail with. It's about data leakage and data breaches. So what is actually data breaches? Without our knowledge, we are sharing our confidential or security data to the third party. That will come under data breaches or data leakage. So uh, so we need to know how to classify our data. So what are the steps we need to do to classify our data? There are four types. Before gathering and also saving our data, we need to classify our data first. There are four ways. The first one is a public, and then internal, and restricted, and confidential. Public. What are the public data? The public data is like all the data which are accessible to the public. Those data will come under public data. And what about internal data? Internal data is like which can be shared inside our organization, like a company catalog, employee handbook, or business plan. So those will come under restricted data. Sorry, those will come under internal data. And what will go into that restricted data? Restricted data is like confidential, not a confidential one, but it should not share to the outside world, like card holder details, his tax related things, and maybe tax related things, or else health information. So those things will come under restricted data. What will come under confidential data? Confidential data is a main important things. It's like a card details, card number, and the biometric details, license number, SSN number. So all this will come under confidential data. So what we will do before gathering the information, we need to categorize in which category these data will come under, whether it will go to public data, internal, confidential, or restricted. So uh, before that means before gathering the data, we need to classify our data first. And once we classify the data, we need to protect our data. That means we created all the data. So how we will protect our data? We need to save in a secure environment. Like if it is a confidential or restricted file, we need to encrypt that file, and then we need to share that particular file in a confidential area. That means other users might not access that particular data, including while sending them emails. Also, we need to classify what kind of email it is, and then know your risk. So once we send or once we started gathering our data, we need to aware that what are the risks we may, what are the risks these data, if the data got leaked, what are the risks these data can occur. So once before creating the data, we need to analyze what are the risks these data can prevent and train your people. So regular training, like I said, periodical trainings. All the employees in the organization will undergo periodical training. So for this data breach alone, we will form one separate team and we will work on this thing. Like there will be one separate team called data protection team, and also the CISO team, like cyber information security officer team. So whenever we are sharing any data in emails, firewalls, or SFTP, so those teams will gather all the informations, and then those team will process all the information. Inside every corporate banking, though there will be these two teams will always classify all the data. So they will classify all the data, and then what they will do, if there is any security related data was shared, if it is a public data, so they will classify all the data, and once the classification done, they will share all the details to the respective application manager. The application manager will be the head of all the teams. So these two teams, data production team and CISO team, will share all the details to the application manager team. Once, if there is any confidential data got leaked, so those CISO team and DP team will share that confidential data to the respective manager, and they will ask for the justification. So each and every manager is responsible for to give the justification why the data got transferred from their team. So these are the things that CISO team and the DP team will do periodically. That means, and the application manager is responsible to give justification why the data got leakage. So the data breach is the major problem, and also most the teams are most preventive upon. So let's move to the key security concerns. So what the developers will do. So the developers needs to aware of these four things before developing an application: data integrity and confidentiality. Since we are working in a banking domain, so confidentiality plays a main role because we are dealing with the amounts. So if they come across any confidential data, they need to encrypt it or they need to mask it. So confidentiality and data integrity plays a major role here. And we need to be aware of sensitive data from unauthorized access. So we need to always aware of data integrity and confidentiality. And what about user authorization and authentication? So user authentication, like whenever the user logs into the application, the authentication will not end here. We will have filters like authentication filter and as well as a middleware. Inside the middleware, we will have authentication logics inside the middleware. So whenever any request comes from the user, we need to ensure whether the user is authorized. So those authentication codes will be the authentication code can either be in authentication filter or else in the middleware. So whenever the user want to access any methods or any functionalities, they need to undergo these two. They need to undergo this authentication filter. And other one is role-based authorization. Like we all know that one, right? Like role-based authentication. If you want to access any net banking website, the user login as well as the employee logins will be different. So we need to be cautious about role-based authorizations. And And we all know about the strong and unique passwords and fraud detection and prevention. How we are detecting and preventing the frauds. Uh, so we are detecting and preventing the frauds by using many tools. So there will be many tools which will keep on running at the background to identify all the frauds. Like we can use a data analytics or machine learning, artificial intelligence, and then by using strong encryption, or else continuous monitoring of our transactions. So those can be prevent and detect the fraud. And secure data storage. So the secure data storage is like we will not store our database in only one location or only one particular server. We will have a backup for all the things. Suppose if there is any disaster, if there is any disaster, so we need to be aware of the disaster recovery plan. We will not store our all the data in one particular server. We will store all the data in a different servers and in different location. So whenever we couldn't able to reach that particular location server, then we will write the code in such a way that it will redirect to the other location, other server. So that way we can secure our data without losing anything. And the second point is secure system architecture. So we all know about this, two-factor authentication, biometric, and token-based authentication. So what is meant by two-factor authentication? Actually, two-factor authentication, we all know about it. Whenever we log in into any banking website, after giving the password, we need to provide a OTP that we receive from the bank. So what in corporates, we also have some two-factor authentication. We will not directly log in our system or VDI from with password alone. So we need to undergo two-factor authentication too. Like we are having certain apps like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Ping ID, everything. So those will generate a token for a minute. So after a minute, the token got expired. Once we enter the password, we need to give the token and then we can log in into the application. And also we are having a hardware tokens. The company or corporate will give a hardware device. So in that hardware device also we will the hardware device also we can see that token. So, so we need to enter the token and then we need to log in into the application. So biometric authentication, we all know about, it's a fingerprint or facial recognition and token-based authentication. So token-based authentication, each and every developer will come into this token-based authentication. It's a JWT or OAuth. So anything we can use. Like if the user give the credentials, so we use certain algorithms to create an encrypted username and password. Maybe it's a JWT token or OAuth token. So after once the user gives the password and apply the algorithm, it will generate one token. So by using that token, we can able to access all the methods or all the that means all the functionalities. So it's basically a developer from the developer point of view. So, and then we will go about secure data storage solutions. So there are how we are storing the data is a main point. If any hacker can access the database, then all the confidential information can be stolen. So we need to avoid that one. So how can we avoid that one? By using the data encryption method. So we will not store all the data as we are giving in the UI. We will encrypt all the data by using certain algorithms, and then we will store that particular data in the database. So that is a one way. The other one is a data masking technique. Instead of storing all the encrypted data, although we encrypted the data, we will use the masking technique to store that data. So dynamic data masking for the real-time data. So for real-time data, we will use the dynamic data masking. But for the non-production environment, we will have more environments like production environment for development environment for developers, and then UAT environment for testers, and production environment for real-time users. So for real-time data, we will use dynamic data masking. And for non-production environments, we will go with static data masking. And yeah, we will go to the third step, that is development best practices. What are the best practices as a developers will do? We may come across these 5 phases. It's a secure development life cycle. It's a planning phase, design phase, implementation, verification, and maintenance. So who will work on the planning phase? The planning phase, the client, business analyst, and one technical person will go for the planning phase. So while planning, they needs to be aware of how many peoples we need, what are the security vulnerabilities they may face, and what are the security information they will provide, and what may be the data breaches happen. So those things will all be analyzed in the planning phase. So design phase, the data architect will come into the picture for the design phase. So the data architecture needs to architect all the website here. So once the client give the requirements, the data architectures needs to provide the architecture for that particular application. So they can use a microservices, or they can use a already, if there is already application, there may be a legacy application. So data architecture needs to analyze, and then he needs to add a middleware, everything in the design phase and implementation phase. So the developers come into picture in the implementation phase. So in the implementation phase, so what usually will happen? What usually happen once the developer writes the code, it will not directly go to the testing team. Before going to the testing team, we need to follow certain steps. Like once the developer done the code, once the developer push the code into the server, so there will be some background jobs running for the security threats. Like they may be check marks or sonar cubes. So those are the third-party tools that will run. Whenever it may be run in a periodic basis, or once the user pushes the code based upon the configuration given by your organizations. So once the user pushes the code into the server, those tools will run automatically at the background. So what the tools will generate? If there is any security threat, if the user written the best code, or if he follow all the best practices. So those kind of things, the tools, the background tool will produce. If there is any security vulnerabilities, it will generate one report in that in the particular line, the security vulnerabilities may happen. Like that, it will generate one report. So based on the report, again the user needs to work on that particular topic, and then he need to push the code again to that server. So once he push the code, then it will not go to the testing team. Then there will be a case for code review. So once the developer pushes the code, his peers or his higher officials needs to review his code. Once he review his code, then the user needs to deploy that code into the developer environment. So once and then the developer needs to test whether everything is working fine. Once everything is done, then only the developers needs to push his code to the UAT environment. UAT environment is for the testers. The testers will test on that particular functionality, and they will also run many jobs to check the user violates any security vulnerabilities, or user violates any policies. So they will run certain jobs, and then once the tester okay with that particular functionality, then only it will go to the production state. Once the data reaches to production, and then in the production, that means in the live environment, we may also face many difficulties or many threats. So once it reaches the production environment, then it will go to the maintenance phase. The maintenance phase will not be handled by the developers. The maintenance phase can be developed only by the production support candidates. So we will talk more about this. So this is what these are the things the developers uh, needs to be understand, like input validations. Input validation, users needs to validate all the inputs, and he needs to be aware of that inputs may not affect any. That means that user input will not cause any issues or any threats or any data breaches. So, and also, suppose if the user want to access any third party server, he may not go directly, and then he may not go directly and access that server. So what the developers will do, there will be one separate team. He needs to go to that particular tool or send out a mail to that particular team that he wants to access this particular server. Please whitelist them. So he needs to give all the IP address, server name, everything inside the tool. So there will be one separate team, security team. So the security team will access that particular server, whether the particular server is legitimate or or the data breach may happen. So those kind of things that particular team will analyze, and then only they will whitelist that particular website. Once the server got whitelisted, then only the developer can able to access that particular site here. And also server side validation along with the client side validation. Here the validation checks not only from the client side, the validation checks needs to be done both in client as well as the server side. So these kind of way we can protect our input data. So what about the output data? Once the data got stored into the database, and then we can retrieve the data by using some SQL queries. So once we retrieve data from from the SQL, we need to decrypt. So we need to aware of the decryption logic as well as algorithms to decrypt those things. So these are the way we need to protect our output data. And of course, we need to avoid the common vulnerabilities and security patches. That means for each periodically we will run the security patches, and for periodically we will update that antivirus and as well as tools which will detect vulnerabilities. Those kind of things uh, we will upgrade on periodic basis. So yeah, here is the difference between monolithic and microservices architecture. Monolithic architecture, so everything will be in the single phase. That means user interface, database, data access layer, basic logic, everything will be in the single phase. So before we are following this monolithic architecture, what is the main disadvantages here is whenever we want to run any security scan on this monolithic architecture, then it will take 2 to 3 days to analyze all the code in this monolithic architecture. So obviously it's time consuming, and it may take many days to fix any security threats. So now we are migrating all the monolithic architecture to the microservice one. So each and every microservices will hold some functionalities. So whenever we made any change in one particular microservices, so we can run this particular microservices alone for a security check. Like we can run checkmarks or SonarQube into this particular microservices alone, and then it will take and the security check may complete within 1 to 2 hours. So after that one, the developers can see the report and then they can work on it. So this is the advantages for the microservice architecture here. And yeah. So these are the best practices we are doing. As I said, code review. There will be some peers or the higher officials. We will review the code. Even the architect also will review the code. And once they give a go, then only they can move that particular code to the next step. and penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. So both are like jobs. We will schedule the jobs at the background. It will run periodically or on the daily basis to check all the vulnerabilities and all the threats that we encounter during the development phase. So it's a risk management and mitigation. And the threat modeling. Yeah. So we are, suppose there is a 3 steps for threat modeling. The first one is the identify threats. We need to identify threats and we need to consider whether the threat was occurred previously. So we need to consider historical data on the past threats. So whenever we encounter any threats, we need to analyze whether it's a new one or a historical one, and also what are the possible attacks it will take. Uh, so those kind of things we need to identify whenever we encounter any threats, and what are the impacts. So whenever we encounter any threats, we also needs to know what are the impacts it will cause. Like uh, that means if there is any downtime, the threat may affect the server, so there might happen some downtime. So how much time the server might down, and what are the costs it will take to up the server again, and what are the recovery plans we are having. So those kind of things we need to be analyzed. And then mitigation. So what are the steps we need to do? Whether it's whether the threat has any histories. So we need to analyze how we fix that issue, whether the fix is effective or it is not effective. So we need to analyze everything in the impact, and then we need to provide a counter measures. So how to avoid that particular threat, or how to reduce the risk from that particular threats, we need to be analyzing the mitigation strategies. So this is the incident response plan. So what is incident response plan? Like I said, in the maintenance phase, the production support team will take care of all the things. So in this way, they will consider this response. Whenever we encounter any threats in the production environment, these are the steps uh, they will they will do to approach that particular test, particular threat. If it is a new vulnerability, that means that there is no history about it, or so if there is any new insight or new vulnerabilities, how they will consider that one? They will first they will first check whether there is any history or not. If there is no history, they need to think what are the mitigation steps they need to do. It's a new threat, so what are the steps we need to do uh, to reduce the impact. So they will do some design, and then uh, they needs to check whether if it is not a threat, it is not affecting anything, they will just improve the security. If the threat is of higher risk, so what they will do? They will hunt for the threat, and if they found it's a high risk threat, what they will do? They will respond through the threat, and they need to analyze what are the impacts it will take and what are the coding we need to do to reduce the threat. So they will do that thing, and if it is a major incident, and then they will do the root cause analysis. If the production team will not able to fix that issue, they will raise an incident to the developers team. So the developers team needs to work on that particular issue, and then they needs to provide a fix. Since it is if it is a major incident, they need to give a fix within a short period of time, and they need to release it. And once it is a major incident, they will and the production support team will not able to fix it, then only the developers team will get that particular incidents to work on. Else the production support team will work on that particular incident, and they will once the once they give the solution, they will directly push the thread to the production environment. So these are the steps the prod support team will work on. If it is a major instance, they need to be solved within 4 to 5 hours to fix that particular threat. So here, this is the user education and awareness program. So what are the things we are doing here? Uh, Here, the user needs to undergo the proper training. As I said, it will be on a periodical basis. Uh, what are the cyber threats we may encounter? What are the and they will also provide the up-to-date material about the threats, and what are the roles and responsibility of all the employees they need to have. So those kind of things we will cover in the security training, as well as the phishing awareness. So we all know about the phishing awareness, and what they will do is periodically they will send us a phishing mail from the organization to check whether all the employees are aware of it or not. Like uh, the phishing mail be like, if it is maybe it the uh, if in the email address there might be if example, if there is a Citibank, CITEBANK, so bank may be A, in that A may be italics, or there are many regular A. So they may check whether we are following all the steps that we encounter in the training. Like we need to undergo, we need to check whether the sender is legitimate, or is there any sensitive information they are in need of. They may send some link to fill up all the sensitive details. So those kind of things we may receive from our security team to check whether we are aware of all the trainings, or and then we are aware of all the phishing mails. And then policies. There are so many policies available in each and every bank. So those we will undergo some trainings for all the policies, and then we need to aware of all the policies. So these are the things we are doing inside the corporate to check, uh, uh, to be aware. That means uh, we are prone to cybersecurity. So these kind of things they will do inside the corporate to avoid risk, or avoid the threats. Yeah, that's all about today. Uh, yeah, thank you, thank you all for listening to my session.
Thank you, ma'am. Audience,
Thank
if you have any doubt, you can ask. Have any doubt? Okay, ma'am. I think you have clearly explained all the things. Huh? What are the expected threats, I think. Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to you for your excellent speech.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And you have elaborated on how the securely use online and mobile banking platforms, providing us with valuable insights. Your expertise and clarity and how made this sessions very truly informative. Once again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks, Sangeeta. Thanks for